it. Good morning. It is Sunday, but not just any Sunday.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, we're back on that aspect. This is the Sunday after we just got the government to reopen itself and finally fix the crisis that they started. It's so wonderful. They know how to put out the fires that they start. The problem is we have one side saying, "Hey, you broke what we fixed." The other guy said, "I'll do you one better. I'm going to fix what we broke." We will discuss that kind of logic and all the crap that's going on in DC that's going to come down and filter to all of us on this rotation. Let's get it. Oh. That's just what I'm talking about. let's break what's already fixed, right? That's the situation we have. I mean, Florida has this great little clause which says that the legislature can't go home until the budget is set and they're ready to reopen at the beginning of the fiscal year, which for Florida is July 1st. And in this year, they actually had to go back after the legislative session was over to finish the budget because they hadn't finished it yet, and they went practically all the way to July. But they still got it done, and the government was never closed down at all because they did it before it was time to refund the government. The federal government, not so much. Even though they can print their own money, they had no problem closing it down. But they did decide to do it, but at what cost? That is why we're here today. Now, my name is Gary Stein. I'm the policy and political director here at Suncoast Normal and our master of public health. And I take it we don't have the applause button. So
I don't have my
I'm
board. Woo, yeah, woo, Gary, woo.
This is officially in charge of side effects right now, too. And exactly to my right and applauding is our master of business administration, our engineer working in a white void in St. Petersburg, but is the proprietor of Chillum CBD and mushroom dispensary. As of now.
Thank you.
And on the top of the list over there on my right-hand side is our executive director, coming to you from Maryland, where it's right at the top of the Beltway, where he hits him below the Beltway, Christopher Gano.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you.
Okay. And we have two guests today because we have, as I mentioned before, a crisis that was ended as they started. It was started as they ended the last crisis, and that is that the Senate decided to slip in a rider in the bill to reopen the government that will effectually shut down the entire hemp industry that they created with the 2018 Farm Bill to allow hemp farmers to grow the hemp, and for others, although they may not have realized it, a whole variety of products available to the public. And we'll get into all the details of it. Chris, what do you want to add to the genesis of this crisis?
Well, before we bring our guest on, I just want to set the stage for folks and really help them understand. The government was shut down for weeks, and when it reopened, a $28 billion industry was deemed illegal. And this is something that had essentially bipartisan support. There were voices on both sides that were against it. It was Representative Andy Smith, the sole Republican in Congress from Maryland, who actually championed the prohibition of intoxicating hemp products in the House, calling it a hemp loophole that has resulted in the spread of unregulated intoxicating hemp-derived products being sold online and in gas stations and corner stores across the country. And again, with the same prohibitionist talking points that many of these products are accessible and attractive to children, despite the fact that this ban will even affect non-intoxicating CBD products that people use for medical reasons. And there were even attempts by GOP lawmakers in both chambers, namely Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky and Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky, who were fighting to strike the hemp prohibition provision. And the bill as drafted, these provisions that essentially make intoxicating hemp products illegal won't be implemented until 1 year after enactment. And the Senator Chris Van Hollen, the Democratic senator from Maryland, says that window provides the opportunity to advance an alternative regulatory model for consumable hemp products in the next year. If that bill can get through Congress before the 365-day deadline, then there's definitely an opportunity there. Now, Senator Paul was joined by 22 Democrats and anti-marijuana Senator Ted Cruz in voting against the motion to table the amendment and prevent the ban. But the majority ultimately squashed it, led by Mitch McConnell in the Senate. So, understanding that under the 2018 Farm Bill, cannabis products were considered legal hemp if they contain less than 0.3% delta 9 THC on a dry weight basis. This new legislation specifies that within the next year, essentially, the weight will apply to a total THC, which includes delta 8 and other isomers, and will include any other cannabinoids that have similar effects or marketed to have similar effects, such as tetrahydrocannabinol. As determined by the Secretary of Health and Human Services. The new legal definition of hemp will additionally ban any intermediate hemp-derived cannabinoid products which are marketed or sold as a final product or directly to an end consumer for personal or household use, as well as products containing cannabinoids that are synthesized or manufactured outside of the cannabis plant or not capable of being naturally produced by it. Legal hemp products will be limited to a total of 0.4 milligrams per container of total THC or any other cannabinoids with similar effects. And within the next 90 days, the Food and Drug Administration and other agencies will need to publish a list of all cannabinoids known to the FDA to be capable of being naturally produced by the cannabis sativa plant, as reflected in peer-reviewed literature. All tetrahydrocannabinoid class cannabinoids known to the agency to be naturally occurring in the plant, and all other known cannabinoids with similar effects or marketed to have similar effects to tetrahydrocannabinol class cannabinoids. The language slightly differs from provisions that were included in the legislation that had previously advanced to the House and Senate appropriation panels, which would have banned products containing any quantifiable amount of THC. And so, this is definitely a major concern that folks have. Again, Forbes put this out as a $28 billion industry. There are countless THC-infused beverages, edibles, and other intoxicating products that are available on the legal market that now are going to be major issues. We've seen state-level hemp bans across the country. But this is going to affect people's business. Carlos is one of those end retailers. We have Mike Thompson on, who also is CEO of Danka Ganja that produces, some great edible products. And then we have farmers like Randy Rembert and Rembert Family Farms joining us today. So we're going to talk about the whole supply chain today and how this $28 billion industry being outlawed, essentially, in the dark while the government was shut down is going to affect people's livelihoods. And so that's all I got to say about that, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how they come up with a policy at the 11th hour, like they just thought about it just then, right? But in fact, this has been brewing for a while, and they were just finding a way to slip it in somewhere. I mean, this again, according to the AP and according to Forbes, that the whole idea of closing this loophole that was created by the 2018 Farm Bill was an actual last wish of Mitch McConnell, who actually was the one who championed that Farm Bill in the first place.
Well, Gary, that's the thing, right? Like, language matters. The fact that it even gets classified as a loophole is bullshit, right? That's the prohibitionists again coming out of there saying, oh, this is a loophole. No, this is a legal product, an agricultural commodity that has been essentially, made illegal. It was made legal and then made illegal. And the sad part is that the person who signed it into law doesn't read what the fuck he signs most days. I mean, you can see it in the press conferences. What am I signing again? Oh, sir, this executive order does this. And it's like, you missed the days of President Biden where an auto pen would just sign shit into law and he had talking points. But now you're sitting there like, fuck, okay, so you sign it by hand, but you still don't know what the fuck you're signing.
So basically what you're saying is the federal government, after the 2018 bill was signed into law, was outsmarted by stoners.
It wasn't outsmart. No, what has happened today, and I want to clarify very clearly: big alcohol and big cannabis. And when I say big cannabis, I mean the multi-state operating MMTCs, many that were founded in Florida, that are stretched across and put their tentacles into every state government, have lobbied and came together to outlaw an industry that cuts away from their bottom lines, because every single story that you see in research paper that we're publishing on normal.org shows that alcohol consumption drops where there's access to legal cannabis, and legal intoxicating hemp products were available in all 50 states before these states started introducing these various bans. And now we're seeing that, again, the alcohol industry and the medical marijuana treatment centers that have put their dirty little paws in every state government and lobbying a corrupt political system have won the day, because they put out more money and they bought more senators.
All right, so we have a bill, the 2018 Farm Bill, that took it into effect at the beginning of 2019. Randy, our farmer in residence, give us a little background about how Rembert Family Farms got into the hemp business and what has happened during those 7 years since the Farm Bill opened up this market.
So I got in once my mom had some ailments, and I was trying to figure out a natural way to help her. So I started growing hemp, and then once she got over her ailment, I began to help other people with their problems. So I never came in from a recreational standpoint. I just came in from a strictly medical standpoint. And it's interesting that 7 years later, they're banning medication by a check written by people who sell poison. Alcohol is poison. Alcohol has no medical benefits whatsoever, but yet they were able to weasel their way in. And what we're about to do is take access for medical cannabis away from people, all because big alcohol said so. So now the accessibility to that is going to be limited to only certain operators, and that's just not fair. Some operators are not going to understand the medical value and the medical importance of this for people in the community.
How much, if you can estimate, how much has your family had to go through to get your farm to the scale it's at right now?
Well, actually, I just had to do something the other day, so it's almost $400,000 over 6 years. This year alone, I did $130,000 investment, and then last year was almost 100,000, and the year before that it was almost $140,000 or so. That's the actual infrastructure. That's not the money we took from sales and put right back into the farm with jobs, with R&D. So that's the thing they don't talk about. Like, we probably put $100,000 towards R&D. Thing about R&D, that's exactly what it is. You use money to make mistakes, and in the process of making those mistakes, you figure out what actually does or don't work. So that money I don't even account. So if we include the R&D, we include the sales, we include everything, we're probably about $700,000 to $800,000 over the past 6 years.
And so your family is heavily invested in this industry during those 7 years that after we finally got all the regulations here done in the state. Now the feds offer a loan program through the Food and Drug Administration, and that was actually added as available to the hemp farmers in 2018 bill, correct?
To my knowledge, it possibly was, but what I actually got was a federal grant. So I was able to get a federal grant to help me with some of the stuff. The rest of it was my savings, as well as my investors, as well as my family paying out of pocket. So majority of this money was our 401k money that we put towards the farm.
The point I'm making, though, is that the federal government did subsidize farmers through Small Business Administration and FDA loans to help build their business. And now we've got a $28 billion business across the entire country. Obviously, some folks have been growing hemp prior to that, but you built an entire business for your family based on the auspices of this bill, correct?
Correct. And then, yes, so the feds did, in fact, invest money in here. And now the same feds on a different branch are saying, well, we don't care about all those billions of dollars we gave towards hemp farmers throughout all these years. We're just going to pull all that away and just say, let's not do this anymore. That's basically what we're getting. And there's also saying, from the farmer standpoint, fiber. That's another 5-6 years of R&D. We didn't figure out CBD, CBG, and all of that overnight. It took years to do that. So to say we're going to pivot right over to making rope and making clothes and all of that, who's going to pay for the other $500,000 for tractors, for seeds, for soil? Where's the money going to come from? So to say that we just going to just jump from CBD to hemp fiber, it's not going to happen. And then there's also no bills, no legislations where the feds say they're going to drop $500,000 per farmer to help us get where we need to be. Those tractors alone are $100,000 a pop. The equipment that we need is $30,000 per machine. We need about 4 or 5 of those different machines to do 4 or 5 different things.
But you were all in on this because you knew it was a medicinal plant that you wanted your family to be able to provide access to people for it. And so, like any good farmer, you wanted to grow the product that the people needed.
Correct.
And this is how the government pays you back, which is is terrible. Plus the fact, as you and I have discussed before, black farmers, especially in the state of Florida, have lost a lot of their own land over the last couple decades due to defaulted loans and things of that sort. And this was a way of helping those farmers get back on their feet. And you were one of the families that actually benefited from that, correct?
That's correct. So we are tied with Pickford as well. So that was a federal class action lawsuit to help black farmers be able to get close to the medical marijuana / cannabis side of things. So yes, we benefited from that as well. But the issue becomes, it's like, what is it going to be tomorrow? What is it going to be the day after that or the week after that? When are we going to stop attacking people? And we're talking about from the federal standpoint. Meanwhile, here in sunny Florida, twice DeSantis killed bills that would hurt farmers, hurt processors, hurt retailers. And the problem being is they went through the proper due process to allow us to look at that bill, give some insight of that bill, and give an opinion on that bill. Whereas as the feds, overnight, they did what they did and signed off on it 2 days later.
Randy, I just want to chime in
hold on, 1 second, Keno. I just got a real quick thing to add to what Randy said.
Hurry before he forgets.
The first bill that was passed, Randy was talking about 2 times that DeSantis took out these bills. The first bill passed, and the first bill is still to this. I mean, there was an operation called Operation Safe Summer that was based off of the bill that passed 3 years ago that they're still fucking with us with. That's all I wanted to point out.
Oh, you're wrong.
No, I wanted to really go to something that Gary and Randy were conversing about.
Is everybody frozen?
No, frozen. Okay, so back to what I was saying, Randy. Gary was touching a little bit about the struggles of black farmers in Florida, but it's been for the past 100 years, ever since the Rosewood Massacre, black farmers have been under attack in the state of Florida. I mean, can you give us a little bit of the journey of the state of being a black farmer in Florida, over the past, just in recent times, with your own family farm, but just the fact that more and more black farmers, at the end of Reconstruction, we're doing very successful in Florida. And then during the rise of the Jim Crow, the early 20th, we saw black farmers under attack, lands being seized, people being run out the state. And at a certain point, being a black farmer in Florida was an endangered species in a lot of ways. And then here you are rebuilding something, bringing something beautiful back, in an entire industry of in class of folks to be able to be successful. And then here we are with the feds just trying to snuff it out. What are your thoughts, brother?
And so that's the true thing too, is that in the 1920s, almost 20% of farmers in the United States were black. And then from there, it became this mass exodus from the South to either go get education or go get a quote unquote job. And then lands were sold for different reasons, lands were sold for pennies. So just to be able to get a black farmer into this situation. Now, then the other thing becomes, I have a friend. He has a farm. He was able to go get someone to get a 1.7 million dollar loan. We don't have that access to capital. We don't have that generational land. That generational land got lost over the past 100 years or so. So even in our situation, when people hear that we're operating on 5 acres and we have another 20 acres, they think, oh, 25 acres, that's massive. But we're so behind the ball on white farmers. White farmers on average have 185 acres. And in the farming game, the business of how much land you have makes a difference when you're talking about volume. So even if I wanted to do hemp fiber, I simply do not have the space to do hemp fiber. So this means that the federal government will not only have to give me the equipment, they will have to go get the land for me as well. Whereas my white counterparts, if they have 50 plus acres, they can possibly shift. It's still going to take years of no guaranteed salary, no guaranteed money, and still another investment of $500,000 worth of equipment. Whereas with me, fiber is not the solution. Fiber is not the answer. CBD is what we signed up for, and CBD is what we were doing. CBD and medical benefits of hemp.
I think it's along the same lines where they talk about the fact that the tariffs would basically increase the amount of domestic manufacturing, but it takes a long time to start a domestic manufacturing industry, and we don't have the infrastructure to use the brass and the herd to go ahead and do all those 25,000 products that Jack Hare talked about in The Emperor Has No Clothes, right? Carlos's favorite book. So they basically had you on the run there. It was almost like the government, they opened up the hemp industry, and the only industry that could actually bloom from that, because of the lack of infrastructure, is the CBD and low THC, mid THC hemp products industry, which is what is being killed right now. And it's, like you said, $28 billion across the country. Why did it grow so high? Let's get into that with our distributor, Mike Thompson. Mike, you and I have been talking about this for years. You're talking about bringing in isolate when you could, and all of a sudden you had an industry where you didn't have to get imported isolate to go ahead and make your product. You were a part of Danko Ganja, which makes a whole line of fantastic Belgian style chocolates, which I think are wonderful and actually have a great effect and is an excellent product and is sold all over the place.
Available at Chillum.
Available at Chillum. Tell us about the genesis of your industry.
Yeah, so I left corporate cannabis in 2022, and I had an opportunity to acquire a marijuana cultivar in Oklahoma at the time. And I was looking at that, and we also were looking at a chocolate factory that had nothing to do with hemp, nothing to do with marijuana. And I looked at it and I said, hey, if I get into the marijuana industry, I'm subject to 280E. Whereas if I get in the federally legal cannabis industry, the hemp industry, I'm not subject to 280E. I can get SBA loans. I can get lines of credit. I could rapidly build up this business with other people's money. And that's ultimately what we did. And, a lot of what I saw happen in the marijuana industry was a lot of planting, a lot of subversion and deceit and basically lobbying to criminalize their counterparts in the hemp industry or federally legal cannabis industry. And I think that's probably the single biggest mistake that these large MSOs made, was underestimating the thousands of mom and pop hemp operators and farmers like Randy and the backbone of America, and thought, hey, you know what? We'll just quietly try to turn them all into felons while we just, consolidate our monopolistic interests just for ourselves. Now, we're going back to, during the last Amendment 3 push. And I would hope that, after, losing that amendment, and a lot of it had to do with a lot of hemp people, being against that monopolistic control. Because, if you want to talk about, Black farmers or minorities in general, the free market of hemp I know more black and brown business owners in the hemp industry than I ever have known in states that have, minority licensing schemes where, a lot of those things typically get hijacked, and they'll try to load up those operators with lots of debt and then basically do what's known as a smash and grab, where they'll basically offer to buy the company, and if they don't sell the company, their buddies in the regulatory agencies will come down on them. I think what we've seen at the federal level is a combination of, mostly this time I actually do, from my sources, it was big bourbon, it was big alcohol, and they were fearful because if you go to Total Beer and Wine, you go to ABC, they're already losing 10% of their shelf space to these federally legal THC products. And instead of innovating, they've been into the lobbying game for over 95 years, whereas the hemp industry hasn't been in the game that long, right? So another thing too is in the Senate, there's a saying in the Senate, what you get your one ask when you're on your way out. And that was McConnell's one ask was, hey, I don't want my legacy to be that I accidentally legalized cannabis. And I think when we look back in history, we'll realize like, oh wait, weed was legalized, cannabis was legalized, and they try to put the genie back in the bottle. I'm cautiously optimistic that I hope the MSOs and the hemp industry can come together and unify and say, hey, we need a single THC policy, right? Federally legal cannabis, even full spectrum CBD will be criminalized in about 360 days. And I think what we're going to see, what will determine that unity is what's going to happen in the state legislature. Now, this is something I wanted to bring to y'all's attention. We face there is going to be a massive attack in Florida and the Texas legislature and other states where they're going to try to criminalize, they're going to try to front run the federal government, and they're going to try to criminalize CBD, THC, and hemp products in the state legislature this year, this coming up in session. And I believe Senator Colleen Burton once again is going to try to reintroduce her legislation that has failed multiple times, that has also been vetoed by the governor, to basically shut down us before the federal government can get to do that. And I would urge everyone who is a federally legal because as of right now, the majority of cannabis products are still federally legal, right? We do have a ticking time bomb. I would urge any business owner to get ready to go to Tallahassee because this year is going to be a make or break year in the state of Florida for hemp products. What I'm afraid of at the federal, going back to the federal level, is and you can kind of see this from there's two organizations. One was the marijuana, I can't recall the name of it, but it's a nonprofit that claims to represent hemp industries and marijuana, and they said that this was a win, right? That this was a win that they recriminalize CBD and hemp products. Another organization, which is SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, they both claimed victory for this. My biggest fear is that the alcohol industry is going to try to implement the three-tier industry, just like they've done with alcohol in numerous states across the union. The three-tier system, if you guys don't know, is it's basically producers, distributors, and retailers, and they kind of set up a meta monopoly where they self-deal with them themselves. And if you look at the companies that set this three-tier, you got your State Streets, your BlackRocks, and your Vanguards, highly consolidated monopolistic interests where they kind of pick the winners and losers, if you will. Not very free market. We need to be aware of that at the federal level. But yeah, that's kind of what I see, everything, all the cards on the table right now, and what's going to determine if we're going to have legalization, general marijuana legalization in the state of Florida is, are these MSOs, are they going to continue to lobby to criminalize this at the state level? Because if they are, they're not gonna win any legalization push. Because the businesses are, you come after a business owner that's for their livelihood, that's akin to death. And then you want us to support you for your legalization push. Now, I know some businesses will say, hey, in good conscience, I'm going to have to give them a monopoly because I don't want to see people get arrested. But I think time will tell what will happen, and I'm hopeful that this legislative session that we can all work together as one industry, like the cannabis industry.
If only Kentucky had a libertarian senator who was interested in fighting what the other senator was doing. because it just seems like you start a business which brings in billions of dollars, and then you shut it down on your own state. That's what I'm concerned about as far as Mitch McConnell is concerned. I mean, percentage wise, hemp is actually a major portion of Kentucky's industry right now. Is it not?
Absolutely. And, Senator Rand Paul, he's our champion. And if you notice, both Democrats and Republicans don't like him because he's fighting the uniparty. And you guys know, some of you guys know how my view is on politics. It's basically the same side of the two coin, right? One thing both Democrats and Republicans agree on is printing more money, debasing our currency. And I would hope that we can come together and say, hey, maybe this is a little too much. We're going to affect people. Maybe we can scare them politically. That they'll lose in the midterms. They're going to lose. I think right now the way things are going, I think the Republicans are going to lose the House in the midterms. Just for a myriad of reasons.
Well, I just want to chime in here, right? It wasn't just big alcohol, and it wasn't just the MSOs. There are some major brands and companies that really push this. The Consumer Brand Association was one of the largest. They were the ones who essentially were behind the scenes helping craft the language. They were the ones that were pushing it. And that organization is made up of Coca-Cola, General Mills, Kraft, Heinz, and Nestle. These are multi-billion-dollar multinational corporations that essentially want to see Carlos, Mike, and Randy in a soup line. And that's when we look at who do we point fingers at, it's easy to point them to the typical, villains that we've seen and that we've bumped heads with since this industry started over a decade ago. But there are much larger corporations that don't want to see the health and wellness products that Randy is producing, that don't want to see the people who purchase Mike's chocolates and who go to Carlos for products for relief. They don't want to see that because they want their bottom lines. They want their brand of poison continuing to be pushed to American consumers, and anything that can take you off of that poison, anything that can take away from their profit motive and them giving ridiculous bonuses to their CEOs and returning these dividends back to their shareholders is a threat. And that is why they did this in the dead of night with the government shut down, because this was not going to make it through the regular budgetary process into the standard farm bill. We saw the holdup. That's why this was pushed through in the dark, where they have the most influence while the government was shut down.
Now, this is where I'm getting confused just a little bit here, and that only takes a little bit for me to get confused at my age. But, the drinks they have at the ABC liquor store, how many milligrams of THC is in each can? Carlos, you know?
When I looked at it, I didn't see anything above 10 milligrams. That kind of differentiates us from, those big box retailers of beverages, because we do offer like a significantly higher milligram dosage for our drinks.
Now, the bill they slipped in, the rider, it says you are limited to no more than 0.4 milligrams THC per package. Now,
yeah.
That's slightly low. I can't even imagine the liquor industry wanting to sell that product.
That's not even like a 6-pack, and they're gonna probably, because a lot of their purchasing teams have internal limitations where they won't even entertain putting a product on their shelf that has more than 10 milligrams. And to add to what Canna was talking about, I think those larger CPG company, consumer packaged goods companies, they view the federally legal cannabis industry as a threat on shelf space. And they can't innovate. You'll see this happen time and time again, where you'll see a mom and pop come up and they're running circles around these large like PepsiCo companies, and the only thing they can do is they can I'll give you an example. Siesta Chips, they just bought Siesta Brands for $1 billion, and what do? Siesta Brands, they had like 5 ingredients. They showed the picture of their family, how they came to America, the whole story of the American dream. What does Pepsi do? It's immediately after the $1 billion acquisition, they sanitize everything. They start putting fillers in the product. They get rid of the family picture, everything that made that company great. And it kind of gets into that entire corporate bureaucracy, and it's just part of the crony capitalism, if you will. But I'm that's kind of my fear of what could happen on the hemp industry here in Florida as well. Just
Well, I've become extremely confused by everything because not only has Truly Bibs put together beverages, and I believe Curaleaf even has a hemp store at this point. So, is it possible that we are on the same side? Are they really going to go and fund some bill again?
Curaleaf's hemp store will still be open. Let's be clear. Curaleaf's
why would that be?
After this.
So it's actually two things I can help you with on that. So earlier I served on a panel with the state of Florida for cannabis, and ABC Liquor was actually there. So the vice president of ABC Liquor was there, and they made it clear that they sell hemp products, and I believe it was actually 5% or 5 milligrams that they were at. So, and then you're saying Curaleaf and Truleaf are selling drinks, and that's absolutely true too. So what I personally believe, looking outside,
Curaleaf is selling everything.
They're selling everything. So what I believe they're trying to do is make cannabis all one, and only the people with a marijuana license is the only people that can sell them. What I believe, ABC Liquor and some of the larger brands are going to partner up with somebody who has a weed license, and that's going to be their legal way of funneling it through. Basically, it's coming off as if you have to have a license in order to be a part of the free market. And these large companies are coming together behind the scenes and trying to knock small people like myself out. And then while they all come together.
Absolutely right, Randy.
You see how crazy that fucking sounds? You got to have a license to be a part of the free market. Like that is it's not a free market.
There's nothing free about it. To add to what Randy was talking about, he's absolutely right. They were trying to do a carve out last legislative session. People were just appalled, like, how, like, are you guys, is this brazen that you guys are talking about this depriving? Because here's the fact. When you collude, what you're doing is you're depriving the people of Florida of economic freedom and liberty. And the free market, mark my word, the free market is the single biggest destroyer of poverty in this country. When you take away the free market and you inside deal and engage in cronyism, you're forcing people into a corner where they're forced to rely on the state for subsidies. If you have a free market, most people who can pull themselves up, pull their bootstraps up, they don't need the state subsidies. They don't need food stamps. They don't need all these subsidies and what have you. So I think it also kind of, like with the state of Florida, the legislatures, and they don't really care. This is why in New York, a Democratic Socialist won, right, in the state of New York, because it's not because of capitalism, it's because of crony capitalism. It's because you've been winding down the American people and depriving them of freedom, opportunity, and liberty.
Well, I mean, just to piggyback on this, the hemp industry fight really does display the corruption of money in American politics. Because, Mike, as you said before, we talk about the free market, but when you go to the grocery store, you're inundated with tons and tons of brands and tons of options. But all those are actually the illusion of freedom, because 98% of the brands are already owned. You pointed it to earlier, Siesta Chips, which you look at as an organic, healthy potato chip brand, has been bought out. Honest Tea, which was something that folks saw. Anytime a mom and pop like yourself, like Randy's, like Carlos, can get onto the big stage and compete in the major leagues with the big multinational brands, the multinational brand just ends up buying them out because they have more money. So we end up to where in America there is not a free market. It is a market that is 98% controlled by 6 companies that have tons of brands, and then the other 2% is made up of everyone else, which is tons of small and mom and pop businesses living hand to mouth every single year to make their bottom line. And as Randy said, when legislation comes down the pipeline, those mom and pops don't have the ability to absorb big blows to retool, but these big multinationals do, because they're writing the legislation in Congress, giving them the leg up on everything.
Absolutely. And I would say this, Cano, this legislative session coming up in Florida, I've had numerous MSO executives that I've had relationships with and worked with in the past completely lie to my face. And some of them lied to your face too, Cano. And I will say this next legislative
Like
session,
all of us.
be very guarded. Like, be willing to work together, but be very guarded, because they could, what they do is they slip in something that does self-dealing at the very last minute, just like what happened in 2014 when Matt Gaetz introduced an amendment that basically made the 30-year nursery requirement, shut everybody out. He did that as a floor amendment. As advocates, the majority of the advocates supported the medical, they front runned it with a Charlotte's Web and all that, but then they slipped in that language at the very last minute. And funny enough, some of the state legislatures that pushed that in, and I know this was 12 years ago, but if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. Some of those are the largest shareholders on some of these MSOs that are still using the government's monopoly on violence to force people to buy from them and no one else. And that's ultimately what they want to do. I will say this. And people like, and I got to give credit to organizations like Florida Healthy Alternatives Association that, help spearhead and get Governor DeSantis the veto for the hemp industry. We were able to get a veto with Governor Abbott. We were able to get a veto with Governor Ron DeSantis. We have the people, they have the money. And when we cannot forget that we have the people on our side. So if we do a carve out that, like, if they did a carve out that said, hey, only edibles that have 100 milligrams and that are chocolate that are sourced through this, that, and the other are going to be the only ones who can have a license, and people who are farmers, they're going to get screwed. No, you can't be selfish, because they'll play us against each other. It's one plant, everything, right? We can't give in. We cannot move the line on THCA. We can't move the line on any of this stuff, because they're going to try to get us to say, oh yeah, it sounds like a good idea for us to criminalize THCA. And then, no, they're gonna try to divide and conquer. They've done this before. They weren't able to do it in Texas. They tried to do it in Florida. And what they'll do, and I'll tell you what they'll do. They'll go to somebody like Randy, they'll go to somebody like myself, and they'll say, hey, we're potentially considering doing some roll-ups on some brands. And you guys are definitely a company that we have considered purchasing. And they'll dangle that little carrot. They'll dangle the carrot to see if you're stupid enough to fall for it, to see if they can get you to capitulate and to fall in line. And then they never fall into fruition. They'll bounce back between legal and compliance, and there's no acquisition. And I guarantee they're going to do that this legislative session. So be guarded, and guys, get ready to go to Tallahassee, because this is going to be, they're going for the jugular this year. And I just hope that they don't. I mean, I know what's going to happen, but I'd like to be, cautiously optimistic and hope that these MSOs don't try to lobby us out of existence again, because
So
we
what
got
you're
to give
saying
them an olive
basically
branch.
is trust but verify.
Exactly. Trust. I don't even know about trust. Just be very guarded and cautiously trust and verify, because they're sociopaths. The people that rise in these organizations are typically, narcissistic sociopaths. It's not someone who wants to do good who will typically rise in that organization. Even the shareholders get screwed over, because they're self-dealing. They're doing what's best for that specific executive, not what's best for the company as a whole. That's why you have these campaigns that are completely out of touch and just like and really cringe. So yeah.
Well, I
Well,
just wanted to jump in, Mike. You had talked about the fact that the way things are heading, people have been turned off throughout this government shutdown. You think that it's possible the party that's in power now loses in the midterms. I found it interesting that what Roger Stone, who is a very well-known GOP operative, had to say on this. I mean, he was saying that rather than default to recriminalizing hemp, Congress should simply enact a statute that distinguishes between naturally occurring cannabinoids, engineered isomers, and licensed therapeutic preparations that set potency standards based on science, that preserves the legitimate wellness uses, the agricultural opportunities, and patient access while protecting the product from uncontrolled psychoactive products, and that the USDA, FDA, DEA, and state regulators should be transparent in their rulemaking. He thought that this hemp section should have been pulled out of the spending bill. He said that when policies made in the shadows, it's the people that pay, not the big corporations, but farmers, patients, small businesses jobs, and access. And if you're going to act openly, debate it, disclose it, decide it, don't bury it. America deserves better. So, if this is a leading GOP campaign guy saying this and they're ignoring him, then clearly there are going to be consequences in the midterms. So I want to go back to Randy. Randy, how does this make you feel politically? Does this make you think that the people in power are not the ones? How are you and your family going to plan on voting in this next election?
So honestly, I feel so. I'm an independent. I'm a registered independent, but I feel like there's going to be a blue wave coming in Florida. We don't know who's going to be the next Republican that's going to take the forefront, and then we got the Bryan guy, which is black, but it's like he's a black racist. So it's not looking good for the state of Florida staying Republican. So
Oh man, I don't mean to laugh, but Uncle Ruckus is running for governor.
he's running for governor, and that's their head man. That's their forefront guy. But
We're talking Byron
craziest
Donalds
thing.
guy,
So
a slimy guy from the get go, regardless of the color of his skin. He's just he's a piece of work.
He's the new Adam Putman.
Yeah,
So for
but
him to get in, I just can't see it happening. So I really predict the blue wave. And with a blue wave, I think we'll see some significant changes in cannabis. Make no mistake about it. A Republican pretty much helped get this bill in, and the Republican president signed off on the bill. So those are just facts. That's not an opinionated thing. That's not saying I hate Republicans. I don't go either way, Republicans or Democrats. I try to vote based upon the issues. So a blue wave coming to Florida is going to be a huge thing. The problem is that blue wave is in November, session is in January. So whatever the governor signs off in June, July is already going to be law by the time we get that new administration in. Regardless, it could be a Republican administration, but regardless, what we know is DeSantis is not going to be governor the end of next year. So it's concerning too, because we don't know who we're about to get next or how they feel. We could get someone worse than DeSantis, could get somebody better than DeSantis. We just don't know until the votes are done in November of next year.
Mike and Chris alluded to the fact that a lot of times politicians dangle carrots in front of us in the way that we'll be distracted towards the carrot, not realizing they're shitting on our shoes. But the fact is that they had created a codicil at the same time as they were putting in the fact you had to be 30 years a cultivator, have $5 million available for performance bond,
Right.
that they were going to give out a minority license based on membership in the Bigford class, which your family is a part of, and also that they had to be part of the Black Farmers Agriculturals Association, which meant you had to be in a special class and a special class in order to get this. And yet, 15 years later, those licenses, that carrot they dangled, still haven't fully been issued, have they?
So 6 of them have been issued, and then the other 6 look like they're dead in the water. I don't think anything's going to happen with those 6. So what happened is 6 of them, they actually used the individual. The other 6 used a business, and because they used the business tied to a litigant, it just didn't work. So there's 5. Well, there's actually 3 Pickford people operating. Then we should be coming on. We're going through cultivation clearance right now. So once our cultivation clearance is done, then we'll be able to get to processing, and then we'll be able to get sales. And we were the last Pickford to get our license. So one Pickford, they have had their license for 2.5 years now, and they still haven't got everything done. But that becomes the carrot. So what's happening now is that a lot of these investors are pretty much trying to take advantage of the black farmers. So we had Pickford back in 1996, and now here it is 30 plus years later, we're having Pickford all over again, where somebody is trying to put money in front of us to move one way or another. We're not moving, so they're trying to tie us up in court.
So the hemp industry is endangered. And right now, because of litigation, is it possible that the MMTC license, that vertical license that you've been going for, is endangered as well?
The licenses are not in danger, but what is in danger is us getting a slow start. So we're already 3 years behind True Leaf. True Leaf have all their genetics. They have all of this. They have the R&D. They have 2 million square feet of grow space. We got 20,000 square feet. So we're gonna have to work out our kinks, because it's one thing for me to do 1,000 plants, it's another thing for me to do 100,000 plants. That's a different type of R&D that has to be done. So what's happened is, and back to the Pigford, we're economically are behind. As Black people, we're behind for the simple fact of we're arguing in court over our right for a license that we were awarded when we really should be out there working. And so every single day, every single week, every single year, we're tied up in court. That's an opportunity that we're missing to become better cannabis farmers and processors.
And hold on, Gary. I want to chime in on that real quick and really narrow into what Randy just said, because so often when we try to address the issues of systemic racism, you get a line from folks opposed to it. Oh, well, that's not how things are. Things are different now, and we're all equal. But the fact is that Randy said it. The existing MMTCs and the multi-state operators, even the ones that started in Florida, have a multi-year head start, and they even began from illegal means, right? Because hemp was not legalized to 2018. So where the fuck did they get their genetics other than moving across state lines from a legal state to Florida? That is illegal. That's a violation of the Commerce Clause.
Right? They magically appeared. And to add to what Randy was saying, I can tell you this as someone who has consulted with brands both for some of the largest MSOs in the country and some of the smaller MSOs, there is a disproportionate enforcement with the Florida Department of Health. So they will take someone like Randy who comes in, he submits his packaging, and there might be 30 things wrong with that packaging, but they're only legally obligated to tell him one thing that's wrong every 30 days so they can bleed him out of money. Whereas with the larger MSO, right, that is lobbying to shut us all down or wants that monopolistic control, they're going to get to, guess what? They get to know all 30 things that are wrong within that first 30 days. And then what happens? The former director of the OMMU gets a nice no-show job for $250,000 a year. So that's another thing too that a lot of consumers don't understand on the disproportionate enforcement. So in addition to lawsuits, in addition to litigation and lobbying, they're throwing, and then not only that, but a lot of these companies owe the IRS approaching close to $1 billion. And they can't even have a quarter where they're making money. MSOS is like $3 and change right now, right? It's just insane, and there's a lot of investors that are just like, man, after this hemp thing, I saw a lot of MSOS bros like celebrating, like, yeah, we're gonna shut down all these mom and pops now. And then what happens? They get wiped out. Billions of dollars in market cap got wiped out Thursday and Friday, which is a shame. I don't like to see that because even though it's, again, I just hope we can work together. But just be guarded and don't fool for the carrot, because if they're smart, they're gonna try to come to us hemp operators. And I've had offers from a couple of different companies. And usually what they do is like Plato Plomo. They'll offer you money. And if you say no, now you've got all kinds of problems that you didn't have before. So
Right.
just be aware of that.
For our non-Spanish speaking audience, that was a reference to the TV show Narcos, where Pablo Escobar used to say you can either have silver or you can have lead. And so that is the option that they are giving you, is you can either take the money or you can die. Randy, how do you feel about that?
I feel like that's exactly what's going on our side as well. So that's what's so frustrating, because we have a hemp battle, and then we have a cannabis, and then we have a weed battle as well, and it's still the same people causing the same problem. So even though I do hemp and I'm doing medical marijuana, I'm still fighting. I'm fighting a two-pronged attack, and it's coming from the same person. They're just coming from different industries. So yes, sometimes we get messages and we're trying to get answers, and the response is you need to talk to your regulatory attorney. Why am I talking to the attorney when we paid $160,000 for an application fee? I'm talking to you and I'm asking you a question. So you get this little response, and then you got to wait for another response. Meanwhile, they're just waiting for you to get frustrated or fall back. So by the time you get everything done, it's 3 or 4 months later. And then by that time, everybody else has already done 2 or 3 more harvests. Since we got started, I've been checking the old MMU website, and there has been almost 100 new dispensaries since then. We can't even get to the dispensary process point yet because it's one process at a time, and it's so much red tape on our side to the point where it's almost set up to be a rich man's game. And because we haven't failed because of lack of funds, they don't know how we're still here, and it's almost like a frustration. Like, you guys keep beating us and you guys keep coming forward, and it's frustrating them.
Well, let's talk about impact. Let's start out with me because I'm a consumer. This is actually a pre-roll from Florida Cannabis Supply. Great little piece of THCA that they created. So I'm a consumer, though you can tell that the wrapper is still on it. So I actually haven't used it yet. But the thing is, I'm a medical patient. I'm a patient who's medical, who's over the age of 60. Sometimes some of us guys, we are on fixed incomes. We can't necessarily afford a medical card. We can't necessarily afford so we can't even walk into an MMTC. So where do these guys go? They've been getting the product from the hemp dealers, responsible hemp dealers like Carlos and like other folks around here. With that industry gone, this will create a greater build in the legacy market, let's call it. And therefore, the MMTCs will still have competition. It just won't be from the hemp dealers. It'll be from the trappers.
But Gary, let's hone in on that, right? The same companies that push this hemp that essentially want that design to happen. They want you to go back to the legacy market because that will then validate inflating the law enforcement budgets again. That will validate their investment in the private prison industry. They want criminals. The fact that there are less criminals now because we have a legal hemp market is not good for any of the businesses that have invested in the existing system that criminalizes things. So, Carlos, I wanted to go to you in all this because after hearing the hoops that Randy has to jump through, after hearing the fight that Mike is calling to action in Tallahassee, you got into this. What makes you think you want to keep doing it?
Good fucking point, dude. No, and you know, to add on to it already, dude, like they're already making retailers criminals. They're already doing that. You know, we had Smokey Jones on the show already. Tampa Police Department, there was an article that came out recently that they raided 10 convenience stores and took out marijuana products and mushroom products. And I'm looking at a lot of these products that are on the table, that they're showing, that they're, you know, showing off that they got these drugs off the street, and they're legal products that have been evaluated by the Florida Department of Agriculture. And, you know, and have been said, okay, you know, and not to mention, they have these guys in handcuffs that look like they're scared shitless, that are immigrants from, you know, India or the Middle East, whatever they are, and they have no idea what's going on. Like, these poor people, if you could see their fucking faces, like, do yourself a favor and look up that article, because these poor people, you could tell right away, are not criminals at all. They're scared out of their mind. They thought they were coming to America and doing a good job and starting a good company. And then all of a sudden, this Tampa Police Department takes advantage of them. So we're already criminals. We're already being considered criminals. They could they could come in at any moment now and, you know, raid the store. So
this is the if I can add to what you're saying, Carlos, this is laying the groundwork for next legislative session. So they could have these big photo ops. What you'll notice is you'll see products where they'll have completely legal federally and state products that have been inspected by the Florida Department of Agriculture. I've seen different vapes that were completely compliant. I've seen different edibles that were completely compliant, but they don't know, because when they use their field tests, it just tests for THC. It doesn't differentiate between federally legal THC or if it's, you know, from a federally illegal THC. Also, same thing with synthesized THC. They were using field tests for that. So what happens is they, like, even if they have, because technically if you're hemp, you know, you could sell non-compliant hemp. It doesn't mean it's marijuana. When you got your COAs and you've got your, you know, your chain of custody, You might be in violation of the administrative rule by selling the THCA, but you're not in violation of the law. And what they'll do is they'll even take like ones and 20s and spread them out on the table so they can have that photo op.
I see that.
So this is laying the groundwork for next legislative session so they can cherry pick and say, see all these products. They won't say that, hey, maybe about 40% of the products were perfectly legal. See all these products. Look, guys, we tried regulating them, but they're not doing it. We need to just shut the whole thing down and give it to our friends.
Think of the children.
Yep. I think the public
it
is
always
waking
comes
up.
back to that. I'm sorry?
I think the public is waking up. I mean, these tactics, they might work for boomers, but they're not working for the youth. They're not like this is
Right.
just a dog and pony show. It's like the same thing over and over again in multiple states. They tried doing it in Texas, and and I won't even sell my product to a retail partner or a distributor. And I don't even see that anymore, where I see the Skittles or the Reese's Wheaties or whatever. I don't even see that. It's such a small percentage. And like I said, we do a pretty decent job of self-regulating ourselves.
Right.
I can
for
tell
sure.
you guys are all great members of this industry, but I have been doing this since 2018. I've been in the game for a good amount of time now. I started selling CBD before the 2018 Farm Bill actually passed. And there was a time when people actually Mike Thompson called me up one time and was like, hey, I think you might get raided soon. I heard something in the background and I'm just worried about you, bud. Like, that was something that my buddy did to help me out, and thank you for that. Fortunately, we never got raided. However, right, with all this time I've spent in this industry selling CBD, picking up Delta 8, selling THCA, selling THCO, THCP, all these different cannabinoids, all these different intoxicating cannabinoids, I have never had somebody come back to me and say, I got sick off of this product. I have never had somebody come back to me saying that my kid had this product and we had to go to the hospital. And not to mention, I pride myself on seeing rhetoric as opposed to logic, and that's all this attractive to children shit is. It is absolute rhetoric. There is a reason why they talk about visits to the hospital and they talk about calls to poison control, and they don't talk about actual situations that cause harm to these children. They never talk about that. At worst, they reference a situation where a child had to have their stomach pumped or something like that, but that is it.
Well, and Carlos, you and Mike just had an interesting conversation about how the sheriff's department will exaggerate. I actually want, real quick, to actually play the video from the sheriff's department and exactly what the hell that they said. It was definitely an interesting thing to see. Let's take a look. So there's the products.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and there they are. Got the guy in handcuffs. Here's the field
Look
test.
how scared he is, dude.
Hold on, look at that. GMO free, 100% tobacco free, organic hemp. Legal products, but here they are with these bullshit field tests.
And those are synthetic field tests too.
Yeah. And here they are, messing with. There's some shroom gummies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look,
This poor
that's
guy
not a
right
criminal.
here.
Yeah, it's not a criminal at all.
This goes back to what
Look
I was
how
talking
scared
about.
he
The free market has given more economic opportunity to minorities than any other. And meanwhile, the fat chat cacks, the blue bloods up in Tallahassee, they're fine. They're fine. But it's all these black and brown minority-owned business owners who are getting disproportionately
Look at that
affected by
stack
this.
of dollar bills right there.
That they pulled out of the register. They pulled the till.
Yeah.
Like these to make it look like these guys are
There's
dopers.
bags of coins. Those are bags of quarters.
There's some hemp pre-rolls, So
And then they piggybacked off of the president's ignorance because what he's doing with Venezuela, where he's blowing up ships with no due process. So somebody walks up a letter late night and say, hey, we got more drug dealers, and let me show you this video of this brown guy from a foreign country. And he's like, oh no, we can't have more of that. the actual bill and actually what's going on, there's not enough language or dialogue to break it down for them to clearly understand that these are American citizens, or at least people with visas that are allowed to be over here, who are operating legal businesses with products that are legal, but the president didn't see that. All he saw was illegals. Everybody that's a certain skin tone is illegal. That's why we're blowing up ships in Venezuela. This is why the best bet is to attack the Florida legislation and it's like the coming together. So one of the biggest things that happened from the federal standpoint, it was just too much division. And that was why they were defeated so easily. In the state, farmers, processors, and retailers all came together. And it was the combination of everybody coming together is what has kept Florida operating. And we have to continue to do that. If we split and one go one way and the other go another way, they're going to do the exact same thing in Florida. And Governor DeSantis is going to sign off on it on this time. So just staying together and fighting together is going to be the important thing when this session comes around in January.
I fully agree with that, and I think that we need to make certain that all the farmers get together and show graphically and physically and literally the impact of what this rider is going to do to those family farms and
Right.
the trickle down effect that's going to happen, because the farms feed us and then we move forward. Without the products from farms, we wouldn't be in this country, most likely.
Right.
We,
Right.
we wouldn't be fed. So what will be the impact on the agricultural industry in the state of Florida with this bill?
So if the bill goes through, or as additional bill comes with Florida, there's not going to be any more hemp farmers. Nobody's going to do it just strictly for CBD. We were already dwindling. We already had went from 800 to down to 300 farmers. Then we climbed back up to almost 900 farmers. But now because this bill is here, there's just uncertainty because we didn't see it coming. So now that it's here, we're going to have to try to pivot to something else. But again, to pivot to something else takes money and takes time to do. And then also, they were telling Big Citrus, hey, those bugs are bad. The fungus is bad. Come join us with CBD hemp. Come join us with hemp fiber. So now you got all these orange people who are working out their bugs and trying to get things off the ground. And in the same year, you tell the orange people to come to go do CBD. This same year, you also make CBD illegal. Some of these people are, I don't know. I don't think they're going to be able to make it. I think some farms are going to go belly up. And if anybody has a mortgage, like I do, because I had to mortgage mine to build the infrastructure, if you can't make that mortgage payment, you're just going to have to go out of business. And now a situation like me, I'm a fourth generation farmer. So you'll put a fourth generation farmer in a position where he can't even pay his mortgage, all to satisfy a handful of individuals.
Now,
And
Mark,
to add, if I may, to add to what Randy's saying, a lot of these publicly traded companies that have access to capital, which kind of front run and lie to their investors, they will be able to survive and be insolvent and have quarter after quarter of losses,
Right.
while small mom and pops like Randy and myself are barely treading water. Even we might be doing millions in revenue, but we're still barely treading water, fighting all these the battles in administrative court, fighting paying for these lobbying costs. But going back to what we had, one thing I did want to mention though on the PR and everything. So they're laying their groundwork with the press releases and the photo shoots prior to introducing the legislation. So that way they can get the narrative. They're going to say, hey, we've got more poison control calls now than ever before, but they don't differentiate. Are those from MSOs too? Or did you differentiate that coming from a marijuana company? Or is it just the mom and pops because you guys want to shut down the mom and pops? They did this at the federal level. Okay. So when I hear the term intoxicating hemp, that term is from a PR firm that was funded by a major MSO.
Right.
When you say intoxicating hemp, go on X and look up intoxicating hemp, and you'll see that Dan Conformer was one of the first people. He's a shill who basically, and it's disgusting what I see some of these guys post, celebrating seeing all these people get locked up, celebrating these business owners having to go into bankruptcy and to receivership. What they also hired another guy, a journalist by the name of Steve Robinson, allegedly. They allegedly hired him, and he runs a publication that's called The Main Wire. And what they did is they went around and they said, hey, these got these Chinese gangs that are selling this THCA hemp flower. It's actually marijuana, and they're selling it to these Indians, and they're filling up our streets with all this toxic products. These Chinese and Indians working together. Oh, and then he'll go on Tucker Carlson, and be like, "Oh yeah, it's owned by a bunch of Indians. Oh, what the hell? They don't care about our country." And they laid that groundwork so Mitch McConnell can just slip it in without a single debate, without a single public forum. Everything was done in the back end. And I have to give credit to some of the people who, I don't know if they want to be named or not, who actually were able to at least leverage and negotiate that 365-day, people like JD McCormick, or because they were able to negotiate that 1 year extra off ramp, because otherwise it would have been 30 days or immediately. We would have been screwed. And
Right.
I can tell you myself, I've got quite a bit in inventory, and I'm ready. But like, come 3 months prior to that 1 year, I can't manufacture anymore. I got to shut down manufacturing because I have no interest in being in a 280E business. See, a 280, for those of you who don't know, 280E is basically IRS code that says the only thing you can write off is the cost of goods sold. That's why the illegal marijuana companies have terrible books, because they're paying so much higher taxes. Whereas in the hemp industry, you can make way more money, have access to capital, access to access to lines of credit, and not be subject to that IRS code 280E. You could buy brand new, vehicles and have them write off 100% accelerated depreciation. Marijuana companies can't do that. So we were way more competitive and nimble. And you see some of these companies, and I honestly think the MSOs, I don't think they give a shit whether hemp is illegal or not. They didn't even want to do the drinks. They didn't even want to do the edibles. If you look at their website traffic for those products, they're shit. And you've got companies like Breeze who are kicking their ass and eating their lunch, rolling circles around them. So the way these companies survive is basically using the government's monopoly on violence and regulatory captures. Milton Friedman said it best. Monopolies cannot survive until the state comes in for health and safety to basically shut down the little guys.
So
Well,
we're
I got
talking
a
about
question
racist
for you,
xenophobia
Mike.
making America great
Uh,
again. That's wonderful. Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, I got a question for you, Mike. For all the things you just said, and for what you were hoping for earlier, what do you think is the likelihood that hemp and big cannabis could work together? Because I gotta tell you, it doesn't sound very good from what you're saying.
I mean, I have hope. I've got some friends in some organizations that are representing the hemp industry. I do have hope. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think what most likely will happen, if in the state of Florida, I think this next session, if we can band together, raise capital, I think we'll be able to fight it off this year, because it's a big election year. But you got to understand, in Florida politics, it's kind of like being, it's not all really a Democrat Republican thing. It's, if you notice, like last session, a lot of Democrats switched over to become Republicans because they'll never be able to get any legislation passed. So in Florida, it's like a super Republican state, and then there's factions within the Republican Party of like, America First or MAGA, and it's like this in California as well. Like if you're in California and you want to do business, you be a Democrat and you play that game, right? So I think in Florida, the best case scenario, we show up in force. We're really loud, louder than ever before, get ahead of it, we'll be okay. At the federal level, and this is just from what I've heard for a couple of different lobbyists, the most likely scenario at the federal level is probably another delay of another year or another 5 years. Not redefining anything through the Farm Bill, nothing like that. Just a nice little, hey, you know what? We're going to change that 365 into 5 years or 3-4 years, just kind of so we can do more research and figure things out and waste a bunch of taxpayer dollars on a bunch of bullshit. I think that's probably what's most likely, the most likely best case, most probable scenario. Although I would love for Rand Paul to have his legislation introduced where we go to 1%, so then farmers who actually want to make hempcrete and the fiber can do that, because they're subject to so many other stipulations. So I think that's probably what's most likely in the best case scenario for both federal and state.
So
Let's see what the
Carlos,
impetus is for them to go ahead and fix this. What will be the impact fiscally at least in the state of Florida, how many distributors are there? How many retailers are there? How many employees are there employed in this industry that will be affected by this if it goes forward?
I mean, there was a Whitney economics report that showed over 100,000 jobs in the state of Florida, multi-billion-dollar industry, anywhere from 200 to 400 million dollars in sales tax revenue. Something you got to know, Gary, and I know Cano and Chris know this, probably Randy knows this too. I think all you guys know this, but for those listening, some of the companies that were lobbying to make federally legal cannabis a felony, the firms that represent them also represent Geo Group, right? The larger private prison contractor. So, and I'm talking about Capital City Consulting. So, if you're working for Capital City Consulting, and you have two different types of currencies you're dealing with, both with capital and then with social currency. Like, hey, I'm going to get your daughter-in-law a no-show job for 120K or 240. That's kind of how they don't do honeypots as much as they used to. So you have these two types of currency, but if you're got an issue that gets a benefit 2 or 3 of your clients, like, so I can help this MSO, I can help this private prison corporation, so we could lock people up like Carlos, Randy, Michael. Let's lock them up, and make them a criminal. That's something to be. It gets a little bit more conspiratorial, but it proved me wrong. These are facts.
So to answer Carlos' question, can MMTCs and the hemp industry work together? I'm actually a minority owner of a MMTC. So the answer is yes. It depends upon the owner. The problem is the vertical integration is the issue. With vertical integration, every time we add someone on, we have to give you a cut of the license, and there's no such thing as a contractor. You are actually part owner of the actual company. And so in this situation, if hemp actually did get banned fully, and we were able to go to the state legislator and be able to get contractors, I would love for Carlos to have a dispensary and we do a 50-50 split. Because now I don't have to be there. I don't want to be there. I would love to be able to go to Mike and say, Mike, make us chocolate, make us gummy. Because I don't want to be there making chocolate. I don't want to be there making gummy. I would love to go to Gary and say, Gary, can you do some press release for me? Can you do this stuff for me? Because I don't want to do that. So there's a lot of stuff that from the MMTC side, we really don't want all that burden. We don't want all that work. But the problem being is they won't allow us in the current structure. They have bills they're working on, and then they have the amendment that they're trying to pass. The amendment where it's saying allowing contractors is music to our ears. So now I can reach out to all four of you and partner up with you. And us being so small, we would love that because we'll be more profitable than, say, one of the larger ones who are deliberately trying to tank the stock to get the stock price so low that they can buy up as much as they want to. We're not doing that. There's only 26. There's only 26. Go ahead.
The thing is that you're a compassionate, empathetic guy.
Right.
You're doing this for the love of the game, right? I think some of your counterparts in MSOs are not exactly ethical.
So there's probably 6 other I can agree to that probably will, but I agree with you. So one guy just found out somehow he had a charge that he was able to beat. So the larger ones I can agree that it's all about money, but the smaller ones we would love the help. And if we could get the help legally, we would get the help legally. And I would say that pretty much all 6 of the Pickford people wouldn't mind partnering up with anybody that was willing to add value. The problem is with the current state of legislation, that the way the state works it now with the vertical integration, we can't do it unless we bring you on as an owner. And then now we're just cutting more and more at the pie. So yes, we would love to work together if the legislation changed and it opened up the door for contractors. What I would like to see is if we can't get this thing changed from the federal standpoint, the state needs to open up the medical marijuana and allow hemp people in. That's what really I feel like the fight should be. The fight should be there should be 500 hemp farm, 500 cultivators in. There should be 300 processors. There should be 2,000 retailers that's on the medical marijuana side, and everybody working together. So then from there, whoever can get in can get in. And unfortunately, everybody may not be able to get in, But based upon how it's now, it's just a monopoly. It's a monopoly. It's the NFL, it's the NBA all over again.
Now, I noticed when I was in Michigan not too long ago that there's a concentration of dispensaries in the smaller border towns in the rural areas that border Ohio and Illinois. And maybe it's because of the fact that it's possible that people are actually going across that border to get the product that they can't get in their own state. So it seems like people are actually willing to possibly bend the rules to get what they want.
Right.
And that's kind of like the chaos theory, finding
Drug
a way.
smuggling.
But wouldn't it be good to stop drug smuggling by having the product accessible in your own state so people wouldn't have to smuggle it over? That is basically where we're at right now. I'd like to get some closing statements from you all so we can go ahead and wrap this up today. And we will be all praying for you to make this happen for you. Randy?
Uh, Fight the good fight. Everybody has to come together. Legislation is coming. There's an attack that's coming. As soon as we read the bill, let's figure out how we can keep hemp going, and let's figure out how we can defeat this bill.
Great. Mike?
I'd like to echo what Randy said. Fight, fight like hell. Show up in Tallahassee. Uh, Cautiously trust, but verify. They will try to divide us because we're united. But we've got a big battle in Tallahassee this year. So get ready.
All right, Chris, back to you.
Well, I was going to give it to Carlos. I mean, he's also a retailer. So
Oh,
Carlos,
yeah,
what do you
sorry.
thought?
It's one plant. We should treat it that way, and we should all come together and treat the world with this beautiful, wonderful plant. That's
Well,
it.
I appreciate that. With all that, I think it's time that we jump into the normal news. All right. So at the top of the news hour, and I think it is important that we take a look at not just what happened with the hemp industry with the government shutdown, but what also happened with veterans getting access to medical cannabis through the VA. Federal lawmakers finalized and approved the military funding legislation that actually will uphold federal rules barring VA doctors from recommending medical cannabis to veterans. The Military Construction, Veteran Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriation Bill is one of three separate funding bills that were included in the package to reopen the government until January 30th. The initial version of the bill, previously approved by the House and Senate, language that was included in repealing the longstanding ban. The language would have, for the first time, permitted VA doctors to explicitly issue medical cannabis authorizations in jurisdictions where it's legal to do so. However, leadership, and by leadership we mean Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, elected to remove those provisions in the conference committee. In 2018, congressional leadership removed similar provisions from the military spending bill at the 11th hour. According to polling data provided earlier this year, most military veterans and their family members believe that the Department of Veteran Affairs should provide medical cannabis treatment to eligible patients. 75% of veterans say they would be interested in using cannabis or cannabinoid products as a treatment option if it were available. I mean, I can't stress enough how much the American people are getting screwed over right now, especially our veterans, especially folks in small businesses. And this all goes back to cannabis arrest and prohibition. And marijuana related arrests far outpace arrests for other drug related violations in jurisdictions where its possession still remains criminally prohibited under law. In 5 states, being Idaho, Iowa, Louisiana, Nebraska, and Wisconsin, more than half of all drug related arrests reported by state and local law enforcement agencies last year were cannabis related, according to the FBI's Crime Data Explorer. In 9 other states, Alabama, Georgia, Indiana, Kansas, Mississippi, North Dakota, South Carolina, Utah, and Wyoming, 40% or more of all drug-related arrests were for marijuana-related violations. In D.C., where adult use is legal, but public use remains criminal, not civil, 42% of all drug-related arrests for D.C. were marijuana-related. In 3 states, marijuana-related arrests are almost exclusively for low-level possession. In Alabama, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, Utah, and Wyoming, 97% of all marijuana related arrests are for minor possession, not trafficking, not sales. By comparison, marijuana related arrests typically comprise only a small percentage of arrests in states where personal possession has been legalized. For example, in adult use states like Arizona, California, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, Montana, New Jersey, Vermont, and Washington, marijuana related arrests comprise fewer than 5% of drug related arrests last year. By contrast, marijuana related arrests comprise just over 1/3 of all drug related arrests in Illinois, despite that it's an adult use state since 2019. Nationwide, state and local police made over 204,000 marijuana related arrests last year, most of which were for simple possession. And the most marijuana possession arrests come from Texas. Second, according to this data, was Tennessee and then Pennsylvania. Now, the reason Florida's not on the list is because our local law enforcement agencies don't even report it to the FBI, so we don't have accurate statistics. And as you saw earlier in the program, we showed how the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office wants to create this reefer madness to distract from the fact that numerous high-level sheriffs have had to resign in recent weeks due to a cheating scandal going on at the Sheriff's Academy. And so the police are arresting and attacking local small business owners, many of whom have a vast majority of legal products on their shelves. And rather than making it a civil issue or a regulatory issue, they make it a big criminal one so it can look like they're doing their jobs. But the fact is that the Hillsborough County Sheriff and Chad Chronister is trying to cover up a cheating scandal, and he wants to put you on this reefer madness tip locally so that way you're distracted from the corruption in the local office. And, you know, corruption is a major issue that we have in our political system. And this is a major problem because they continue to attack us at every single level. But we have an opportunity to take down a major plank of marijuana prohibition. Members of the Normal Legal Committee are participating in an amicus brief in various appellate court cases, being the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals and another before the 5th Circuit, which has found that you shouldn't have to give up your Second Amendment rights, of course, to be a cannabis patient, to be a marijuana consumer. And now the U.S. Supreme Court is actually going to hear from it. So I think it's important that we address these issues, that we continue to put pressure on our lawmakers, that we continue to put pressure and we pay attention to judicial races, because who are sitting in our seats, whether as our judges or state attorneys or public defenders, all matter in the grand scheme of how we bring down prohibition and whether or not our civil rights are being trampled upon in the vast majority of all this. Now, as we look at the support for cannabis, recent polling data compiled by Gallup shows 2 out of 3 U.S. adults say that the use of marijuana should be legal. And that percentage represents a slight dip from last year when 68% of respondents backed legalization. The percentage change was primarily driven by declining support among Republicans. Only 40% of Republicans support and endorse marijuana legalization. By contrast, 85% of Democrats support it at a nearly all-time high, as do 66% of independents. Historically, Republicans have been less likely than Democrats or independents to express support for legalization. In 2023, 55% of Republicans supported endorsing it, the highest percentage ever. So as those poll numbers come out, those big corporations like Coca-Cola and Kraft and Heinz and Nestle and even big alcohol and big cannabis all see this and they're like, well, we got to do more. We got to scare these folks. So that's why you see Republican sheriffs like Chad Chronister doing these reefer madness things. That's why you see all of these ridiculous things translating at the local level. And then you see the talking points. It is working and has an effect. And you're going to see more and more stuff on Fox News and various consumer outlets about the dangers of all this. You know, Mike touched on it earlier, how you have these industry plants going on to Tucker Carlson's podcast and trying to scare folks into the reefer madness. And it's just not working on some folks, especially the independent-minded folks. It is definitely clearly is having an effect. Vast majority of Democrats are in support of this. But again, there's still that disconnect of the leadership and the generational differences. You saw it with the shutdown and the various disconnect. A lot of Democrats are not happy with Chuck Schumer. A lot of Democrats are not happy with Hakeem Jeffries. The folks in leadership in both parties are disconnected from their base in a lot of ways, and we're seeing that this dissatisfaction in these midterm elections. I say all this to say, if you're a Republican and you don't like the way things are going with cannabis, then you need to get involved in your party's local primaries. You need to elect solid pro-cannabis candidates in the Republican Party, because they're the ones who are going to be making the decision at the various state levels. Now, getting off politics for a moment, let's go back to why we're doing this. And this is research that I want to talk about that's coming out of Israel. We had an amazing show with Dr. Barlev Shriver last month. And I think that it is important that we revisit some of the amazing research that's happening. Israeli researchers assessed the cognitive performance in a cohort of more than 67,000 adults who had a mean age of 67 years old. And older adults with a history of cannabis use exhibit superior cognitive performance compared to non-users. This goes back to the therapeutic and antioxidative effects that we've seen with cannabis that our own Department of Health and Human Services has had a patent on for over 20 years. And the study's authors have concluded that while cognitive harms are often assumed among older cannabis users, the results suggest a more nuanced picture. The findings support a balanced messaging that informs decisions, that reduce age-related cannabis stigma, and promote clinician-patient dialogue on therapeutic cannabis. The findings from the cross-sectional analysis show that participants with cannabis use experience perform better across all cognitive assessments compared to those without. What does this mean? It means that all the Reagan propaganda, all the Nixon era propaganda, which is being regurgitated and regarbled during the Trump era around cannabis and prohibition, continues to be proven by science as bullshit. Your brain cells do not die because you're a cannabis consumer, that you're a pot smoker. Actually, the opposite. So again, if you're an older person enjoying the legalization that we have today, understand that there has been a lot of sacrifice, a lot of fight in all of this. And I think it's important that you continue to support organizations like NORML that are doing what they can to ensure that we give you the research that we're continuing to lobby in Congress. You can do your part by becoming a member. Join Suncoast NORML. Everything that we're doing right now is going to make a big difference in Tallahassee. It's going to make a big difference for cannabis consumers, and we want to make sure that we can continue to support the mission, which means that we need your support. So if you're watching right now, hit that like and subscribe button. Go ahead and share this video with a friend. Let folks know what's happening, and do your part. Tell your lawmakers how you feel. Go to normal.org. Go to our action center. There are action alerts to contact Congress. There are action alerts to contact President Trump. There are action alerts for what's going on here in Florida to contact Governor DeSantis and the members of the legislature to address things like patient protections, so that way you're not discriminated against in medical procedures. There's the parental rights protection bills that we're sponsoring. There's employment protection bills. There are so many key pieces of legislation that need to get passed to improve the lives and the experiences of cannabis consumers in this state. And we need your support to do it. So, of course, become a member, take action now, make a small donation, and support the mission that we got going on here at NORML. And, of course, peace and jump into rotation. And that's all I got, guys. That's NORML news.
All right, I should mention that I'm at the mean age of 67, approximately, and I can say for a fact that I am more mean when I do not get a chance to get access to cannabis, and it does do wonders for my cognition. I have noticed that actual improvement.
I was about to say, what happened to Gary if cannabis doesn't kill brain cells? Because he's been smoking longer than us. There must be. I mean, I'm sure smoking works pretty well for Gary to help protect those brain cells. But maybe that paraquat back in the day fucked him up.
Well, I can tell you that my brain cells are probably the waking dead. Because they're working just fine right now after 50 plus years of use on and off. And I appreciate all of it. Appreciate all of you. We got to get this legislation fixed. Program note, next week, we're going to talk to folks who were in the room where it happened. We are going to have the CEO of the Marijuana Policy Project, Adam Smith, on, as well as the policy director for NORML, Morgan Hill, who is also out there in in DC watching it all go down, and they are going to give us their inside baseball on the before, during, and after with this legislation, so we all get a lot more informed. So we're looking forward to talking to you again next week. With that, peace out from me. Carlos, anything?
Hey,
Nope.
Kano, can you see if NAE still hand me a soda?
Hey, smoke weed every day.
Yeah, smoke weed every day, guys.